If the current crisis escalates into a World War III scenario, the government can and will shut down the internet for a period of time based on the threat level and based on what they would need to accomplish in order to try to maintain order. This is something that you can guarantee we will see if this whole thing spills over into a global conflict. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and we're talking about the fact that if World War III was to actually break out, there would likely be an internet blackout, especially here in the United States. Historical precedent has been set for these things to happen during any kind of conflict scenario, and there's actually little known pieces of legislation out there within our own government that would allow for this kind of behavior. Now, why would this need to happen? Well, the internet allows for open communication, data sharing, intelligence gathering, and financial transactions, all of which could be detrimental to an authoritative body during a true SHTF scenario. And I think we can all admit that if this whole global crisis situation that we're currently watching right now escalates into World War III, that true SHTF scenario criteria would definitely be met. And keep in mind that these things have happened throughout the last few years in many other countries, and there's a lot of examples of this type of behavior coming from authoritative regimes. When you look at Myanmar, where there was pro-democracy protests going on, and the military there said enough is enough, they shut down the internet because those protesters were using it effectively to organize their protests and to communicate and network with the people they needed to support the movement. And you can see why this is so important to people who want to be prepared. We need community. We need our mutual assistance groups. We need to be able to network and communicate and work with each other. We also use the internet for a lot of things like acquiring equipment, getting supplies, ordering food, a million other things that we need to do to be prepared are on the internet. And that could go away at any minute. This is why you need to pay attention to it, and why you also need to understand why our government is capable of doing it. And this is definitely something we could see happening here in the near future. And if you're preparing for things to fall apart into a true SHTF scenario, which they likely could at any point in time at this moment, then hit the subscribe button below, because we don't know how long the internet will be on for, and you might want to see the last video I ever post. I don't know, that's up to you. Now, what is it that allows for this to happen here in the United States, okay? Well, first off, you have Section 606 of the Communications Act of 1934. And basically what that allows for is it allows for emergency powers to seize control of communications facilities if the president declares there is a war, there is a threat of war, or there is a state of public peril. Now, all of that criteria is currently met. All of that criteria is also met in the sense that we have been under a elongated state of emergency for quite some time now. So at the end of the day, this could easily be used to acquire or shut down the internet in any way they see fit. And keep in mind that this act, of course, written in 1934, doesn't necessarily talk about the internet specifically, but it also does not exclude it either. So it could easily be used for that purpose when that time comes. And I think that we can all admit that the internet would likely be shut down not only during a time of crisis, but during a time where the government needs to act in a certain way that would not be beneficial to be, I guess you would say, watched during that time, right? So a lot of things would have to happen for us to not be aware of what's going on in the world. And I think the internet going down would probably be the primary one. These are all things you really need to be watching out for. And if the internet ever has a massive nationwide or globally wide outage, I think that we would all have to assume something very nefarious was going on during that time. Now, what else allows the United States government to do these things? And keep in mind, this is not just happening in places like Myanmar. This has happened in Kazakhstan recently. It's happened in countries like Iran. It happens all the time. Even China limits the access to the internet based on certain conditions that are currently happening in some of their major cities. These are all things that governments already have the ability to do, but ours does as well. We just haven't seen it happen in the same way yet. This is why I'm trying to make you aware of it and get you prepared for it before this happens, which I think is likely to happen at some point in time. There's something you need to really understand. There's a standard operating procedure known as SOP 303, okay? What it does is it codifies a shutdown and restoration process for use by commercial and private networks during a national crisis, okay? Which currently we are in. And we have been in for quite some time, all right? Now, what does Standard Operating Procedure 303 actually say? Well, here's what you need to know about it. The DHS, or Department of Homeland Security, has the power to cut the internet off at any point in time with no oversight, all right? And on March 9th, 2006, the National Communications System approved SOP 303 without ever releasing it to the public. Now, that is something you really have to keep in mind. Why would this information be withheld? Shouldn't we know what the SOP for basically shutting off the internet would be and what we should anticipate during whatever that time would look like based on that SOP, right? Well, in 2011, this is something that you should probably remember, but just as a reminder, in 2011, there was protests at the BART system in the Bay Area of California. The Bay Area Rapid Transit had all cell service cut in their stations during these protests in order to quell the protest and to eliminate the protesters' ability to communicate, to organize, and to get more people there to cause more of a commotion, I guess you would say. Now, this was found to be targeted in those specific areas of those BART stations where cellular data was cut off, specifically to keep people from uploading videos and from downloading things and from communicating, okay? Now, that is how easily this can be done and how targeted it can be done. But that's just one example, all right? Now in 2012, based on those actions during those protests at the BART systems in the Bay Area of California, the Electronic Privacy Information Center submitted a FOIA request for the details of SOP 303. And keep in mind that this is 6 years after SOP 303 was introduced and approved, all right? Basically, that FOIA request went all the way to the Supreme Court without any prevail. Basically, we still have no idea what's in SOP 303 and went through many different courts and many different bouts in the sense of fighting to find out what this standard operating procedure is and what we should anticipate in the sense of our internet being suddenly cut off. And at the end of the day, nothing has been released to the public. We still don't have access to it. But what we do know about it is that, like I said, the DHS can shut down the internet at any point in time based on the threat level without any congressional approval or any kind of checks and balances. And we also know that they have the ability to target specific areas at specific locations, at specific cell towers to cut off all data, okay? So here's what you really need to think about. At any point in time, we could lose this, our ability to communicate through social media platforms. We could lose our ability to acquire more gear, more supplies, more food. We could lose our ability to network and build mutual assistance groups or meet other preparedness-minded people within our area. And this should be a reminder that not only should you have backup plans like radio or maybe, I don't know, carrier pigeons, but you should also be working on building those communities and networks as best as possible right now. So keep that in mind. I do have a link to our Discord here in the description as well as in the pinned comment. So if you want to network and build those communications out while you're still able to, that gives you some access. We have channels for every single state. We have channels for multiple countries, and people have done well with talking with each other and getting, I guess, at least some relationships built when it comes to people in their area that are also preparedness minded. But this is where this could go very easily. And if you think for a second that the internet won't be cut off, or if the internet won't be manipulated to the point of only giving you the information that's approved by the authoritative body, well, you haven't been paying attention to any other country then, now have you? And the fact that I just went over 2 different pieces of, let's just call them legislation, that would allow our government to just say, we can't do it right now, sorry, no internet. Well, you should be very keen to the idea that at some point in time, it'll go down. And I have a feeling that if this whole World War III thing actually happens, we're going to have that scenario unfold as well. And you and I are going to be poking around in the dark, wondering what's happening out there, while those who are in power are very aware of the fact that we are in peril. This is what we need to work on right now. Communication, networking, building community, and everything else related to the fact that we are on our own. And we will be on our own, and our ability to be a community will be attacked at some point in time. So, Hopefully this gave you some things to think about. Leave comments below if you have anything else to add about any of these other types of legislation or internet restrictive activities that exist out there. And you can always email me at magicprepper@gmail.com if you have pertinent information. But this is what I wanted to talk about. If anything else for me, go to magicprepper.com, and that's going to be it for Magic Prep.